Hello everyone, welcome back to ToolTech MD. In today's video we're going to go ahead and get started building the SMT10 Raw Builder's Kit. I'm not sure what we start with, so I'm going to go ahead and tear into the manual and have a look at it, and we will go from there. Let's go ahead and tear this manual open. Alright, let's go ahead and flip this open. So it looks like the first thing we're going to be building is the differential gears. So we start with bag A, then from there we will go ahead and stuff all that into the axle housing. So basically we will start with assembling the axles. The plastic bag 1 is what we start with. That contains all of our axle components. So we'll go ahead and get that opened up. I'm going to go ahead and move all of our other parts off to the side. Bag A is what we start with. Looking at step 1 here, we're going to start by assembling our ring gear and spider gear assembly. That is all contained within bag A, so we'll go ahead and open that up. There's a checklist here in the manual of all the included parts and hardware. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up bag A. So we got some bearings, we have some screws. There's our diff gears, and some more screws. I'm going to go ahead and set our axle shafts off to the side for now. Along with bag A, we're going to have to dig into plastic bag 1 and have a look for our spider gear housings. I've located our spider gear housings all the way in the bottom of the bag, so we'll go ahead and lay those out. Alright, so we're going to start with assembling our spider gear assembly. Let's go ahead and open up our bag of gears here. Let's go ahead and grab our spider gears out of here. We're going to need 4 of them. Set our other ring gear to the side, as well as our 2 pinion gears. I'm not using them quite yet. These are spider gears. These are spider gears. Those will all be contained within that case right there. Here we have 2 gaskets and all of our shafts here, so we'll go ahead and open them up, and we're going to have to identify which shaft these spider gears sit on. We have a handy identifier here, so we'll use that to identify which shafts go where. These gaskets will sit on this case just like so. So we need shaft number AX3170, so we'll need that shaft. In this bag as well we have a couple larger shafts. We don't use those yet. And we have 2 clips for pinion gears, so we'll set them off to the side. Let's go ahead, set one of our spider gears in the bottom of our case just like so. I'm going to go ahead and open up our grease. Go ahead and put some grease down in here. So we've got some grease in there now. Go ahead and slide our 2 smaller spider gears onto our shaft here. So we'll slide one of our spider gears onto the shaft like so. And we'll do the same with the other one. Slide our other spider gear onto our shaft. These are the 2 smaller spider gears that ride on that shaft. We'll set this shaft with the spider gears down into the casing here. Pop that in just like that. Perfect. Go ahead and put a little bit more grease in there. We got that greased up. Take our ring gear and our last spider gear. Go ahead and set it on the ring gear like that. I'm going to take our gasket, instead of putting it on the case, I'm going to put it right on the ring gear. Okay, then I'll take our case, and this just snaps together. Like that. Perfect. Then we can go ahead and get our screws in there. So let's open up our screw bag. I believe this is the proper screw bag. It's not really labeled or anything. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and lay out a few screws here. I need to see what we are really dealing with. I've got to identify these screws using this parts list, so just bear with me. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and use 4 of these little screws here. These are part number AXA015. We'll take 4 of these and secure our spider gear assembly to the ring gear. That will require a 1.5mm hex driver, so I'll go ahead and take our screw, set it on our hex driver. We'll go ahead and start this into this assembly. And repeat the process over on this other corner here. Start to thread that one in. Okay, we'll go ahead and repeat the process with all these other screws. We'll go ahead and get these all tightened down once I've got them all threaded in. Okay, got them all tightened down. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one. I'm going to do that off camera because you don't need to see the same thing twice. Alright, next up we're going to go ahead and get our pinion gear assembled. So this is our pinion gear right here. That sits on this shaft here. Now this is the drive pin for the pinion gear, and then we have a little E-clip that secures that all together. Alright, so we're going to take this drive pin, slide it through our shaft here, like so. Then we will take our pinion gear, just go ahead and feed that shaft through the pinion gear. Seat that within the pinion gear. Then we're going to take our E-clip here, and it's going to slide on the end of this shaft. Take our E-clip, set it down on there. I'm just going to take this little pair of tweezers here, and I'm just going to seat that E-clip. Alright, there it goes. E-clip is on the end of the shaft. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other pinion. Again, it will save you the trouble of watching the same thing twice. Okay, got our pinion gears assembled. I'm going to go ahead and open up our bag of bearings now and place 2 bearings on each of our ring gears. According to the manual, it's calling for these 2 larger bearings, so we'll go ahead and slip one on there. Just press it on there, a little bit of force. Okay, go ahead and do the same thing over here. Just go ahead and press it on over. Alright, looks good. Same thing with our other one. Press that bearing on. And good. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and get our axle housings out of our bag. Axle housing number 1. Our ring gear retainers. And our diff covers. I'm going to go ahead and snap off these parts from the part tree. And I'll just go ahead and trim off this flashing. This is our front axle housing. We're going to start with that per the manual. Alright, so we're going to take our bearings, 2 of these smaller ones. We're going to press one into the case, all the way down into the bottom of the case so that it's sitting there, and then we're going to go ahead and press another right there into the axle housing, just like that. Then we're going to take our pinion gear and insert it into the axle housing, like so. Feed that shaft through both bearings. And you'll see the shaft come out the end here. Should look just like that. Alright, so with this being our front axle, our ring gear, per the manual, with our drive shaft coupler facing down, our ring gear will sit just like this in the case, so we'll go ahead and install that now. Slide that down on in there. Looks good. And it's engaged with our pinion gear. We're going to go ahead and install our retainers. Those secure the ring gear into the case. Same with this one. We'll go ahead and get our screws started into those retainers now. You just have to apply a little bit of pressure to get those screws started within those holes. And do the same down here. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing for our other retainer over here. Same thing. Then you can go ahead and tighten these retainer screws all the way down. Do them evenly though. I'll work the bottom and then I'll work the top a little bit. This way they seat nice and evenly on the ring gear. Then I'll go back to this side. Go ahead and make sure everything's turning okay. Looks good. And we'll go ahead and apply some grease to our ring gear. Work that grease in. Looks good. Perfect. Go ahead and take our diff cover now and install it onto our axle housing. We'll go ahead and take 4 of our AXA115 screws. Get those threaded in using the 1.5mm hex driver. Again, just apply moderate pressure here to get those screws threaded in there. Alright, I've got all 4 screws threaded in, so now I'll go ahead and tighten them all down. And I'll just go ahead and make sure they're all good and tight. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the rear axle. So now we're moving on to step 3, which is to install our C-hubs onto the axle housing. So our C-hubs are on this parts tree. So we have to install 2 bearings into each end of this axle housing, 2 of these smaller bearings, and they will just slide into the end of the housing, just like so. Just like that. Same thing for the other side. Bearings are very important. Alrighty, now we're going to install our hubs. We want the long side of the hub to face the bottom of the axle housing, and we want the screw hole at the forwardmost position on top. So we'll go ahead and slide it over. Make sure it's seated properly. You want the screw hole at the forwardmost position of that hub. The same thing on the other side. Slide that right on over. We'll start at the bottom. We'll go ahead and thread in these screws to secure these hubs. Tighten these up using the 2mm hex driver. Do this side as well. Then we'll go ahead and do the top. Okay, we're going to go ahead and grab our axle shafts, and then we will be installing our knuckles. Okay, we'll go ahead and get our knuckles off our parts tree now. We want to make sure that our steering linkage hookup is facing the front of the axle. So this is how these will go. Okay, so we'll take our large bearing and seat that inside the knuckle there. Do the same for this knuckle, just press that large bearing in and seat it. Go ahead and take our smaller bearing and seat that on the outside of the knuckle. Same thing with the other one. Now we can go ahead and take our drive shafts and push them into the axle housing like that. Make sure they engage into the diff. Take our long one. Do the same thing. Both our axle shafts are in. Now we need to take these little plastic spacers that serve as like a ball joint. Push them up through our knuckles. They'll go in just like this. Same thing for this bottom one. Snap it in. Do the same thing for our other side. And the bottom one. Perfect. Alright, now we'll take our dog bone end and feed it through our knuckle. Then we can go ahead and slide our shaft through there. Line up our screw holes in our knuckle with the screw holes on the hub. And get our screws in there. So once that's started, go ahead and do the same thing with the bottom screw. You don't want them too tight because you want it to be able to steer nice and easy. You just want to snug them up. Perfect. Just like that. We'll go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. Go ahead and feed the end of the drive shaft through the knuckle. Feed it on over. Get your screw started. Do the same thing with the bottom one. Alright, you just ensure everything is working as it should. Turn your drive shafts, make sure they're engaging with the pinion. Everything looks good. Alright, now let's move on to the next step. So we're going to have to mount up our lower link mounts and our upper link mounts, but first we have to thread in these set screws. Alrighty, so we've got to thread those little set screws into the bottom here and here. So let's do that. Right there in the center of the diff, the bottom. Thread that little set screw in there. I imagine that's just to plug up that hole. Same thing down here. Pamphlet saying the third one goes somewhere, but I don't see that in the differential cover, so we're not going to bother with that one. Alright, next, let's go ahead and mount up our lower link mounts. These mounts will sit on here just like this. And then we use screw number AXA087. These will use the 2.5mm hex driver. Thread that into that mount. Same thing over here. Alright, got that all tightened up. Now we have to mount our upper link mount. Okay, click together nicely. Now we need to get screw number AXA144. So it looks like that. That's AXA144. So we need 2 of those. So we'll get those threaded in. Same thing over here. Thread that in. And using the 2mm hex driver, we can tighten those down. Very good. Then we have one more screw that goes through here. AXA0349. So this is AXA0349. Threads in through this hole right here. Thread that in and tighten it up, and that will complete the front axle. Front axle is completed. Now we can move on to the rear axle. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and finish assembling our rear axle. We've already done step 6. I did that all together. Got our pinion and ring gear and everything in there. I didn't record that because that's the same as the front axle, only reversed. Alright, so now moving on to step 7, we will attach our hubs. Here's our hubs. Let's go ahead and finish the assembly of our rear axle housing. First thing we're going to do is feed our smaller drive shaft into this end. Make sure it engages with the differential. Alright, then we'll go ahead and push a bearing onto the end of the axle. You can go ahead and seat that like so. And then we'll just take our hub and slide it onto the splined area on the housing. Okay, go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. Feed our axle shaft through. Engage it into the differential. Take a bearing, feed it onto the shaft, seat that, our hub, and line up the screw hole and feed that on. Gonna go ahead and get our screws started. Start with our top ones using the 2mm hex driver. Tighten them up. Go ahead and do the same thing on the bottom. Thread it in and tighten it up. Already got our rear hub carriers installed on the axle. Now we just have to install our lower and upper link mounts. Get our lower link mounts off our parts tree here. Mount sits on the axle just like so. Thread in our screws here. AXA087, and then using the 2.5mm hex driver, go ahead and thread that in. Same thing for the bottom screw. Take our other lower link mount, clip it on the axle, thread in our screw. And our bottom screw. Then our upper link mount will sit like this on the axle. They'll just snap together. So our 2 upper screws, one here, and then one over here. Using the 2mm hex driver, go ahead and thread those in and tighten them up. Then this screw will thread in right here. We just have to plug these 2 holes down here at the bottom using these little set screws. That completes the assembly of our front and rear axles. In the next video, we will start to assemble our steering components as well as our upper and lower links. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it to be helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, please comment, and please subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you here. I will see you in part 2. Thank you for watching.